Hi, I'm Andrew Thompson from CPAC, joined here today in Ottawa by Kimothy Walker. Kimothy, good to see you again.
Oh, it's good to be with you again.
And you've been working hard on a documentary that's going to air on CPAC, on air and online, beginning Friday, December 11th. It's called Sexual Violence, Social Media and Society, Is Canada Facing a Crisis? It's a bit of a long title, but maybe you can, it certainly gives us a good idea of what we're going to see, but maybe you can tell me a bit more about the story that you tell.
Yeah, part of the title obviously is to make it clear that this content is pretty difficult content, and the documentary, it's almost 1 hour, is essentially about sexual violence in Canada, social media being fairly new, and this is the first generation of people that can watch increasingly violent pornography on their phones and on their iPads, and that's having a dramatic impact on people. So what we did was we went to campuses, we looked at the Giangameshi situation, we talked to former Crown attorneys, and we also talked to two families that had been impacted when their young people were involved. In one case, she was gang raped on a beach, White Rock Beach. She was 13 years old. And then the Rehtaeh Parsons case, which we know quite well, was in the headlines, and the photo that circulated pretty much around the world. And Rehtaeh later took her own life.
And talking about those two cases you just mentioned, you traveled to both ends of Canada, talked to two fathers who are still grieving over these incidents that happened, but are linked by those tragedies. So, what did you find when you were talking to those men?
So Glenn Canning and Rick Falcon opened their hearts to us, and they didn't know each other. And I'm not going to ruin the ending of the documentary, but they didn't know each other before we told their stories, and some interesting things happened over the course of this. We started shooting in March, so we've covered a lot of territory. And we also have Sheila Copps in there. We have a friend of Giangameshi's, former friend of Giangameshi's, Elvira Kurt, the comedian. And so we had all of these really passionate people, but these two dads and their raw emotion and their grieving, and they both amazingly are trying to change what they see as a crisis, the crisis of rape culture, and they're trying to educate boys, and they're trying to get young people involved, and so they've taken their grief and they've moved forward with it, and we actually follow them through that process.
So certainly part of the documentary is outlining the problem and the history of this issue. What are some of the solutions, some of the ways to address this that you heard from the different people that you interviewed? There's
one that stands out in my mind. We interviewed this young woman just on the street. We turned to Canadians, and we interviewed a lot of them out on the street, and she said the number one thing that we can do to combat rape culture is to admit as a country that we have rape culture. And I thought that was so impressive for a young woman to be able to articulate that actually is the problem. There are still people out there who think that this doesn't exist. They think that feminists made it up. The most recent statistics, and we have some groundbreaking work in there from Ipsos Reid, the most recent statistics tell us that this has impacted 4 million women. The statistics are harder to find on men because the reporting is a lot less. And they're decreasing the number of times they report to police. That's an important thing to see there. And the reason is that they feel hopeless that anything will be done. And if we're going to deal with this in Canada, we need to first of all acknowledge that it's happening. We need to acknowledge that it's not really a national priority, and we need to question that. And a lot of people in this documentary say the answer to that is that women's issues are not fundamentally important. And to fix that, we need to change that perception.
And finally, Kimothy, obviously sexual assault and violence, these are some of the most personal issues that can affect a person, and it can be really difficult to talk about, as you mentioned. So, what was the reporting process for you like in trying to delve into this topic, to find people willing to share their experiences about this?
Well, it's an interesting question, because I've gone on the record previously and nationally saying that I'm one of those 4 million women, and I was 9 years old when it happened to me. And I say to people, this documentary was 35 years in the making, because I I have watched this issue, and I think now what's great is that people are talking openly about it. With the Giangameshi part of the documentary, we saw all those women come out with, been raped, didn't report, hashtag. Everybody was talking about it. That's a heck of a lot different than when I was a lot younger, and certainly when I spoke out for the first time 10 years ago. So I think there's hope. That's the great thing. I think that society is really getting its head around this, and that there's hope. So when I approached this as a reporter, and we had a wonderful co-producer, Sarah Stevens, we looked at it to make sure that this wasn't personal about me and what I brought to it, and any bias that I might have. We looked at both sides, and we made sure that we represented the concerns of those 4 million Canadian women. And then when the two dads part of the documentary started to come together, I thought that that was such a beautiful way to talk about it, because we often don't talk about the families, and we don't talk about those who are left behind. And I think that this is why this is groundbreaking. It's a truly groundbreaking documentary.
Okay, well, the documentary, as mentioned, is called Sexual Violence, Social Media and Society, Is Canada Facing a Crisis? And it premieres Friday, December 11th on CPAC, both on air and online. And you can visit www.cpac.ca for more information and more on air dates. Kimothy, thanks so much for talking to me today.
Thank you very much for the support. I appreciate it.
Thanks.